Welcome to this week's episode of LDN ONT here on Rogers TV. I'm your host, Bronagh Morgan. So if you tune in often, you know that sometimes we talk politics, but seeing as how everything is political, a lot of times we're just telling really interesting stories. And there are so many people, London, Southwestern Ontario, with so many interesting stories. Today, we have as our guests two storytellers. And so a little bit of Bronagh, but a lot about them because I'm going to let them tell their stories. The first guest that we have, maybe a familiar name, is Christy White. So Christy is the mom of somebody who's a friend to our show, River Christy White, and he is a wonderful hoop dancer, autism advocate. Christy is an author of 3, and I guess today is the big day, 4 children's books, part of a series. The series is Jay and Gizmo, and I have fallen in love with my copies of these books. I bought a set for me. I bought a set for my kids' school. Welcome to the show, Christy. Talk to us about Jay and Gizmo.
Thank you so much for having me. The Adventures of Jay and Gizmo is a Indigenous children's book series that I started with the main focus at first around boys and literacy. Because as a mom, I've seen lots and lots of boys struggle around literacy and that kind of thing. So that was the main focus, and really focusing on bringing back positive, like boys in problem solving, positive role modeling positions, those kinds of things. And then the next step is I started into culture and language revitalization. And some of that is just really making Indigenous stuff for children commonplace. So that way, everywhere children are, there should be something they can access that, reminds them of themselves and that they can connect with.
So important, because representation matters. When somebody, is looking at the picture books in their school library or in a bookstore, not everybody always sees somebody that looks like them.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things with the project around identity and stuff is they're using the books in places like Guatemala, Philippines, all over the places to teach English as a second language, because boys are being really, really receptive to the Jay and Gizmo series, because again, he's a boy that's similar to them in some ways, but also different. So it engages them, it gets their attention, and it's also a learning experience for them.
Absolutely. So can you talk to us about the inspiration behind Jay himself and Gizmo, and, a little bit about the creative process?
Absolutely. So with Jay, we really wanted to just center focus around just a fun-loving boy, somebody who really just screams fun and enjoyment, and going back to that, just, boys and exploring and adventure. So we really tried to make Jay a character that all Indigenous children could connect with, no matter what nation or territory they came from. There's always something about Jay they can connect with. As for Gizmo, that's interesting because I come from Oneida Nation of the Thames. So I really remembered growing up that we've seen a lot of what we call quote unquote res dogs. And I remember it wasn't until I was about 6 and we lived in the city and we went to a friend's place was my first time seeing a cat. And I didn't know what to think of it at first. And I had a billion questions, and I'm watching this thing and it was so intriguing. So in that, I also realized that cats for a lot of Indigenous children would be just as intriguing, because there's many organizations that are, communities that don't have cats. So that's the main reason we really just sparking that attention to, again, a boy that's just fun loving, and again, his love of an animal that maybe not all Indigenous children are exposed to, so it gets their attention.
So not to spoil the story for anybody, so hopefully, because they're pretty quick read, but really, really fun read for kids as well, like to read themselves, but also for their parents and their caregivers to read to them. Can you just walk us through the relationship? So the first book starts with that, establishing that relationship, and then where have Jay and Gizmo gone together since then?
So yeah, the first book is where they meet and just establish their relationship. In the second book, they learn about hoop dancing. And that also features River in it, and it has a little message about autism awareness and inclusion. Because we, as Jane Gizmo and just as a family together, we're very much about inclusion for everybody. And then our third book is about boys and braids. And it was so, when we worked on that book, it was such a passion of mine because I had seen my own sons, my brothers, struggle with hair and bullying and that. And at that time, there was a lot of young boys coming forward in the news about being bullied around their hair. So that was just really, really impactful book. All of them have their own kind of message. And it's great because you can pick up any single one of the Jane Gizmo series and you're not missing anything.
Yeah. And it's so easy to, they're so accessible. Like it's so easy to fall in love with these characters and want to know what is next for them. So I know that there is a fourth book in the series that is just about to hit the, I guess, bookshelves and stores and stuff. So can you give us a little sneak peek about that?
Absolutely. We actually, today is our launch of the newest book, and it's Jane Gizmo Learn About Powwow. So Jay actually goes on an adventure to a powwow and actually meets up with a fancy dancer that here in London, a lot of people know. His name is David White, and he comes from Bikeshwanon. So he is our newest character to be spotlighted, and that book actually launches today.
So if talk to me a little bit about maybe some readers' reactions to your books. Like, what have you heard back from, say, maybe not parents like me, but the kids who are getting into this series?
Well, I have an interesting quick story about that. I was at a powwow one time with my son, and we were walking around the vendor space, and there was this little girl, and she kept like tugging on her mom and saying, "Mom, that's her, that's her." And of course, for me, I was like, what am I missing? Right. So I'm looking around and trying to see what she's seeing. And she's still tugging at her mom. So her mom finally looks down and says, "Oh my goodness, that's her. That's the girl who wrote my book." And I think that was the first time I really went, oh, wow. So we talked about it. I've done little impromptu children's readings at powwows because the kids just flock to Jane Gizmo. And again, we have grandparents who are buying it for their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, so that way they can connect back with culture. Especially a lot of our residential school survivors are buying sets for their grandchildren and great-grandchildren to give them kind of back that piece of connection they feel they lost.
That is, so doing so much with, a picture book that just, it has a few pages, but it has such an impact. So you're going to stay with us because we're going to meet another author, but we do have to take a little break, Kristi and viewers. So please stay with us because there are so many more stories to tell that I know you're going to love. We'll be right back. Welcome back to LDN ONT TV here on Rogers TV. I am your host, Bronagh Morgan, and I'm a storyteller, but today I have some amazing storytellers, self-published authors. Our second guest, I was such a fortuitous situation. So through this show, I met the organizers of the Essence and Culture Awards, which was an event that happened in February this year during Black History Month. And lucky me, I ended up sitting with one fascinating guest that were there. What a great event. And I got to meet Gabriel Ndayishimiye, who is the author of Run Elvin. So I have my signed copy here. I did just reread it yesterday because I was in need of some perspective. And I think you'll understand why when you hear a little bit from Gabriel about the book and his story. So welcome to the show, Gabriel.
Thank you so much, Bronagh.
So talk to me about, I know we don't have time to go through the whole story, but maybe the inspiration behind your book and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so a little bit about myself. I come from Rwanda, but I grew up in different refugee camps in Africa, in Tanzania and Malawi. And then I came to Canada through a student-sponsored scholarship in 2016. So I wrote the book in 2018 as an open letter to my son, Elvin, who was born in 2017, just 1 year when I was in Canada. So I was not there. So in 2018, really, it was a tough year for me. I was, a father for the first time at 23 years of age. And then it was a depressing moment. So I started writing basically to my son, out of the compassion that I felt, and also the need and the responsibility that I felt as a father, because growing up, I never had a father and I've never met him. And I don't know if he lives or not.
Wow. So, and a lot of this is the inspiration and the story that's in the book. So you talk about your childhood and, learning about your father's story, learning about your family in the book. Talk to us a little bit about that journey, if you don't mind.
So, it was an easy journey because I always knew my story, but I always had questions to ask. My grandparents, and then my mother, whom I haven't seen for almost 20 years now, 20 years now. So it was easy to put together, but the very last part whereby I discuss about my father, that part I learned about it from my mother in 2020, when I was just finalizing the writing processes. But the writing itself was really smooth, but I also did get a lot of help from, people at my university, my editors and friends as well.
So when you, can you just tell us about your, journey to Canada from your homeland? So how did that all come about? Because I know that's articulated in the book a little bit, but you're writing a whole book and self-publishing a book while you're in studies as well.
Yes. So coming to Canada, I came as a sponsored student at Huron College. And then I came basically because I was a refugee. And then the opportunities that I got basically gives young people basically an opportunity to settle down in Canada and then start their new lives in Canada and they build afresh. And so, I came as a student, but I also came because I didn't have chances to go to a university elsewhere in Africa because I was living under refugee status. So when I came to Canada, I saw all these opportunities around me at the university especially. And then I took advantage of that basically to build a story out of it and then get help from people who were around me because universities are great in that way.
Fantastic. So what program were you initially in, and are you still a student?
The program is called World University Services of Canada. I graduated in 2020. Now I went for a master's degree in immigration and settlement studies at Ryerson, but then things happened and I kind of put that, on pause. Right now I'm back in London and I'm just working.
I think you do. Is it a podcast that you do as well on top of writing books and keeping busy here in London?
Yeah, so I'm volunteering with Win Community Center. They have a podcast, that is basically run through Evo TV, by Colin and his team. So I've planned basically each and every week on Mondays to call a local author and basically give them an opportunity to showcase their work, but also an opportunity to interview them. Now, I love books so much, and I love reading other people's work and other people's writings. And so, it's an opportunity for me to do things that I love at the same time, also an opportunity to get my name out there as a writer, but also as a publisher, because I started a publishing company called Living Books, but also an opportunity to connect with other authors and showcase their work.
Fantastic. So as somebody who is not just an author, but also a publisher and also a lover of literature, can you tell me what you're reading right now and tell us about, maybe tell our viewers about some authors they might not know about that maybe would be a fascinating weekend read or something that we could really learn from, the way I loved learning from your book?
So right now I'm reading The Rebel by Albert Camus. It's basically a philosophical writing that talks about, civil disobedience and all of that. So I'm into those kinds of stuff. But yeah, that's what I'm reading right now.
And how about writing? Is there another book on the horizon for you, Gabriel?
I've been working on my second book. That is still in production, but I've kind of put it on pause. I just self-published also another book, seemingly book that I started writing in the summer of 2019 for 3 months. Now, because I couldn't continue with that book, it kind of talks about my journey with Christianity and me, going away with basically done away with the Christianity stuff because I no longer believe in a God or something like that. There's that existential crisis that I was exploring in that book. So it's now published as a diary because I just couldn't keep up with the work, and I put everything, all my writing on hold, and I'm just focusing on building myself, getting myself settled.
Wow, so much going on, and I want to hear more about it. And we're actually going to bring Kristi back and hear a little bit discussion between our two authors, finding out about the creative process, a little bit about self-publishing and getting into this field, because I think a lot of people over the last couple of years maybe have been diarizing and thinking about becoming authors because lots of self-reflection time has been happening. So please stay with us. We're going to be right back with more from Gabriel and Kristi after the break. Welcome back to LDN ONT TV here on Rogers TV. So I've been so lucky today to be able to chat with a couple of my favorite local authors, Gabriel and Kristi, about, a little bit about the creative process, but I thought it would be interesting for our viewers and for me as well to put our authors together so they can tell us a little bit and maybe talk to each other a little bit about, the journey of writing and self-publishing, promoting, anything that you'd like to share. So why don't we start with you, Kristi? Like how either the business, the creative side of things or the business side of things?
All of it. Number one, I wanted to give a shout out to our artist. Like she is just incredible, Sherry Campbell. That's a great thing. This whole project, we spent so much time on every little detail that right to the wording, to all of that. I too also had to become a self-publisher in order to get the books going. So that's been a journey all on its own. It's a very different journey than having like a big publishing house pick you up. And
so I guess you have to be really motivated to get that story out there.
Absolutely. And I think for any writer, any artist, anything, it's the passion that you're bringing with it definitely makes a difference, because especially being an author and doing books, no matter what level, is a lot of networking. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of grinding. So you have to have like a good amount of passion behind what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I think for you, Gabriel, like the passion behind the writing had to do with telling that story to your son, but publishing, you've been able to share that story that was inspired to, talk to your son who is far away, and I guess really touch the heart of the people who are reading it as well. So the dual purpose.
Yeah. So actually, as much as I wrote the story for my son, I also wanted to write it for the public, because part of my writings, and that's what I plan, they have to be a little bit historical. They have to touch on a very historical context, and then build a story out of that. So, and in the place that I come from, the people of my generation, people who are 28 years right now, who were born in 1994, or 5 years before the genocide, haven't written anything. So I would say that so far from my generation, I'm the second person who has lived in the refugee camps where I come from, like Tanzania and Malawi, to write a story about that. And that is the reason why I say that not so many Rwandans would buy into the story, especially, political or politicians in the country, because of some of the stuff that I discuss in the book. And I wrote it for my son. I was trying to learn from how James Baldwin and Ta-Nehisi Coates write their books, and how they wrote to a very specific audience. James Baldwin writes to his nephew, Ta-Nehisi Coates writes to his son. And so I was also trying to basically emulate that, but I failed miserably.
And so Kristi, when you are writing, do you have a particular, like, I would assume it's the, Indigenous boys who are not represented in literature, but do you have somebody in mind when you're doing your writing?
Actually, as a mom, I found, especially my boys really struggled with literacy. And then as I started looking more and more, I found that it was a literacy thing all across the board, not just for Indigenous boys. And we figured out a lot of it was just re-engaging them with a positive boy who was just having fun, but still problem solving and that kind of thing.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, would you take a minute or two, maybe we'll start with Kristi, and just, it's so powerful to hear an artist, an author reading their own words. So do you have like a little favorite paragraph or little snippet from the books that we can share?
Absolutely. So in the back of every of the Jane Gizmo books, we have this little saying. So, we always hear about the girls wanting sugar and spice and everything nice. So there was one that was put together, and it says, "Stars and moonbeams and boundless dreams. That's what little boys are made of."
Beautiful. It's such a lovely sentiment. Okay, Gabriel, how about you? Is there maybe a little passage that really stands out for you, or that you could read and share with our viewers?
Yeah, so it's just right at the beginning of the book. I said, "I have worked every day to offer you the future you deserve. I know that your life experiences are and will always be different from mine. And more than anything, I hope they will be so much better. But no matter how far you have come and will go, you need to know that not every moment will be sunshine and roses. There is no sunshine, joy, or glory without dark days of the soul. For nothing good comes easy in this life. Goodness comes to those who go out and chase it, never to those who wait." Like Philip Dube reminds, "I can sit here and teach you every trick in the book, but at the end of the day, it is your life."
It's beautiful. Thank you so much. Anything else that you can share, I guess, going forward with, I'm so moved. Anything else you can share going forward with our viewers with respect to, maybe they're inspired to be like you and write? Is there, a word of wisdom for those people who are hoping to self-publish someday?
I think there is no problem with self-publishing. When I first did it, it's still publishing, because you've written a book and you've had the courage to get it out there, and it's been revised by editors, and people are going to love it. People are going to read what you've written. So I would advise young writers basically to get the courage to self-publish if no publisher is interested in their book, especially during these days that people who publish with big companies are people who have got a little bit of their name out there, and people with big connections. So for a self-publisher, I think they can do it. It doesn't matter how much you sell. At the end of the day, you just want to get the story out and continue working on other stories if you are serious into writing.
Thanks. And Kristi, words of wisdom?
That's exactly it. If you have anything to write, get it out there, take the chance. For the literacy aspect of the project we do, it only takes one book to change a child's literacy at any point. So yeah, I would tell anybody, if you have a dream to write and get a book out, do it. Just do it. People love it. We're always looking for new content all over. And again, I agree, even if the big publishers aren't looking, keep at it, because you know what? You will have people who very much value your work.
And I very much valued your time today, and I love these stories. I'm looking forward to reading more from both of you. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Kristi, for being here, and thank you, viewers. We'll be back next week with more LDN ONT TV here on Rogers TV. I'm your host, Bronagh. Have a great week.